Everyone. It's August 8th, 2025. It's 11:42 where I am right now with my family, just traveling and visiting in Texas. And I see some of you are joining me. Just some thoughts here. The United States, Americans, are complicit in what we are witnessing right now. And what we're witnessing is a genocide happening in real time, committed by Israel against the Palestinians. It's a genocide. It's a genocide not just according to me, but to Amnesty International, to Human Rights Watch, according to B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization. It's a genocide according to Umar Bertov, an Israeli Jewish American scholar who was born in Israel and served in the IDF, who had a scathing piece in the New York Times just a few weeks ago. He's one of the foremost scholars on the Holocaust and the genocide. It is a genocide now, even according to Jeremy Ben-Ami, who's the president of J Street, a liberal Jewish American Zionist advocacy organization. He says even though he doesn't use the term, he has seen the evidence that it is a genocide. We have to trust the evidence of our eyes and our ears. And this genocide, folks, has been done with U.S. taxpayer dollars, with U.S. weapons, and with the United States diplomatic support, both of the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Every single day, there's a new horror story. Now there is phase 5 starvation and famine. We are seeing Palestinian children dying every single day, just dying, dropping dead because of man-made starvation. Why? Because Israel is blocking humanitarian aid. Israel, the government, the extremist government run by war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, has said, oh, it's because we have to, block the aid and not send aid because Hamas is stealing it. Well, the Israeli military contradicted the Israeli government and said, no, actually, we haven't seen Hamas steal the aid. It's a choice. This extremist government is choosing to starve Palestinian children. Now, regardless of what your opinion is, you have to ask yourself, what have babies and children done to deserve such a violent death, where they're dropping dead every single day thanks to starvation? And if it couldn't get any worse, it was just reported a couple hours ago that on Friday, today, Israeli leaders have approved of a plan for a gradual military takeover of all of Gaza, a massive escalation. After apparently 10 hours of deliberation, a majority of Netanyahu's security cabinet backed his proposal to conquer the core of Gaza City, according to a pre-dawn statement from his office. This is from the New York Times. And the military is then expected to push into central areas of the enclave where Hamas is believed to be holding Israeli hostages and where Israeli troops have largely refrained from operating before. Now, this is in contradiction to the Israeli military, because the military and much other Israelis, such as former Israeli prime ministers, have said this is a terrible decision. This is the Israel's military chief of staff, Lieutenant General Zamir. He has pushed back against the plan, according to 4 Israeli security officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity. He has shared concerns about the exhaustion and fitness of reservists and about the military becoming responsible for the governing of millions of Palestinians. Oh, yes, it's the Palestinians. 2.5 million Palestinians who are in Gaza. 2.5 million Palestinians who are in a concentration camp, an open-air prison, who are occupied, who have been killed. 61,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel in the past year and a half, and that is an undercount. Lancet, the medical journal, says that number is probably 40% higher. And I haven't even talked about the 150,000 Palestinians who have been injured, including the children who are now amputees. Israel has created more child amputees in Gaza than any other place in the world. Israel has killed more Palestinian children in the past year and a half, nearly 2 years, in Gaza than in all the children killed in all the war zones combined. And now there is phase 5 starvation. Since May, folks, since May, now there are reports, Haaretz reported it, where IDF soldiers have been commanded to shoot at unarmed, starving Palestinians who have gathered at the 4 remaining food aid distribution sites. They have killed more than 1,200 Palestinians who have gathered out of desperation at the remaining 4 aid distribution sites. Every single day, if you've been following the news, more and more Palestinians are killed. And Israel says, well, they're overcrowding the sites. And that's the justification to apparently shoot and kill unarmed, starving Palestinians. They've killed more than 1,200 just since May. This is a humanitarian crisis and a genocide being streamed to our phones in real time. What is the definition of genocide? I got it for you. Genocide is the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group of people because of their ethnicity, nationality, religion, or race. The term was coined by Raphael Lemkin, a Polish-born jurist, in 1944 to describe the mass murder of Jews during the Holocaust. In 1948, United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide defined genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Just 2 days ago, Israel's senior officials close to Netanyahu were quoted as saying the following: "The die is cast. We're going for full conquest. If the chief of staff doesn't agree, he should resign." And voila, today, now you have the Israeli Security Cabinet, against the wishes and advice of its own military, going for full conquest of Gaza. That word conquest, who else has used it? Oh, yes, extremists in Netanyahu's own cabinet, such as his finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who said recently, "We are conquering, cleansing, and remaining in Gaza until Hamas is destroyed." That's an exact quote. A couple of months ago, he also said the following: "Within a few months, Gaza will be totally destroyed. The Gazan citizens will be concentrated in the south. They will be totally despairing, understanding that there's no hope and nothing to look for in Gaza, and will be looking for relocation to begin a new life in other places." Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, an extremist, a person who an Israeli reporter basically described to me as, imagine if a KKK leader was the security minister of the United States of America. That's how extreme Ben-Gvir is. Back in the day, Ben-Gvir was indicted by his own Israeli government for inciting terror against Palestinians. These people are like the most blunt, transparent supervillains of all time. No dog whistle. They're literally telling you their supervillain plot. What he said a couple of months ago, and I'm going to quote him: "The only aid that should enter Gaza is for the purpose of voluntary migration, folks." This is the genocidal intention of Israel's current leadership. The words reflect the policy. South Africa, when it made its case last year to the international court that Israel is committed to genocide, the bulk of their evidence, folks, was simply copy pasting the exact quotes of Israel's current leadership. All right. And now you have seen that, the intention reflected in the action before your very eyes. It is happening and is ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. Here are the words of the United Nations Secretary General: "Gaza is, quote, a horror show with a level of death and destruction without parallel in recent times." And I want to go back to how I started. Israel cannot occupy the Palestinians, expand illegal settlements in the occupied territories, or engage in this genocide without U.S. support. If the United States today, if right now Donald Trump, he's probably sleeping, but if Donald Trump picked up the phone, told Netanyahu, "You better cut it off right now, shut off the tap, it's over." Without U.S. weapons, without U.S. missiles, without U.S. money, without U.S. diplomatic support and cover, Israel cannot continue this genocide. I just want Americans who are watching to really sit with that for a second. We had a little bit of a movement, something that was somewhat positive, that for the first time in my lifetime, I saw we saw 27 Democratic senators. I'm going to include Bernie Sanders. He's independent. So 26 Democratic senators plus Bernie Sanders, independent. A majority of Democratic senators voted just a couple of days ago to stop arms sales to Israel. Every single Republican, of course, voted for it, but you had 27. 27 is huge. It should have been all of them. All of them. As of yesterday, there are now 11 elected officials in the House who are using the G word genocide. 10 Democrats, only one Republican, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I want to vomit in my mouth, and I hate this timeline because Marjorie Taylor Greene has been cooking on this issue. I've been reading some of her tweets, and I'm like, what the F type of timeline am I living in where a racist and hate marketer like Marjorie Taylor Greene on this particular issue is more moral and ethical than a majority of the Democratic so-called leaders, such as, Schumer and Jeffries and others. Folks, they're still not using the G word genocide. I think the word has to be used. You have to use the word to accurately describe what we're witnessing and to convey the horror and the barbarity of what we're seeing with our eyes. It's not my word, okay? Genocide is Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Omar Bertov, and other experts in genocide who are saying that this is now a genocide. Doctors Without Borders, these doctors, international doctors, just reporting horror story after horror story about children deliberately being targeted in the skull. Young men, teenage boys, deliberately being targeted by Israeli snipers in the groin, folks. And so we have to ask ourselves, why, oh, why? Did Democratic leaders and Republican leaders just about 3 weeks ago take a bipartisan support with Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal who visited for the third time? Why, oh, why are they still giving Israel the money and the weapons? Why, oh, why are they incapable or unable to call it a genocide? Folks, in the past, Ronald Reagan, it was when Israel was invading and committing war crimes in Lebanon, he saw the horrors that were unfolding on the television. He called up the Israeli prime minister of the time and says, I'm seeing a Holocaust on my television screen. This has to end. The Israeli prime minister allegedly said, Sir, with all due respect, I know a Holocaust. But Reagan said, I don't care. I want this to end. 20 minutes later, Israeli prime minister calls him and said, fine. We saw Dwight Eisenhower also play hardball, right? The United States right now, if it had competent ethical leadership, of course it doesn't because it's Donald Trump, this could end. And now this is going to be a full occupation of Gaza. They're not going to leave. Why would they? If you've seen the images of Gaza, folks, it's like a scene from Blade Runner 2049. It is just a hellscape. I mean, 61,000 people killed. No schools are left. Hospitals gone. Majority of the buildings just gone. And now, even folks who haven't followed the story, even before this all-out genocide, human rights organizations said that it was a catastrophe. Gaza was a catastrophe, right? I mean, we're talking about trauma after trauma. We're talking about just polluted water. We're talking about, electricity shortages. We're talking about just skirmishes and violence on a weekly basis, right? I mean, even before it was just it's seen as an open air prison. That's the way people described it. So now imagine it. You don't have to imagine it because you can see it. You can see it with your own eyes. And folks, here's a tweet from Barak Ravid. Senior Israeli official tells me, I'm going to quote him, the operation that the IDF is currently preparing for is only in Gaza City. The goal is to evacuate all Palestinian civilians from Gaza City to the central camps and other areas by October 7th. A siege will be imposed on the Hamas militants who remain in Gaza City, and at the same time, a ground offensive will be carried out in Gaza City. The Prime Minister and the Defense Minister have been authorized to approve the IDF's final operational plan. Camps. Yair Lapid, anyone who speaks out against Israel, as you know now, some of the hardcore right-wing pro-Israel groups say anti-Semite, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. Does that include the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, who, by the way, has openly accused this current regime of committing war crimes? Is he an anti-Semite? Does that include Yair Lapid, who was also a former prime minister for a short while, of committing and he said that these humanitarian cities that Netanyahu was talking about, his words, Yair Lapid's words, concentration camp. Folks, this is going to be a disaster for the Palestinian people. This is going to be a disaster for Israel. This is going to be a disaster for Jews. This is going to be a disaster for the region. Israel has engaged in 35,000 targeted strikes in the past year and a half against Palestinians in 4 countries, right? Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Lebanon. For those who follow Middle Eastern politics, there's not too much love there between Iran and some of these other countries, but the people who are polled say the number one most volatile, disruptive force in the region is Israel. Right. And now we have a Netanyahu regime. Netanyahu is accused of war crimes. The Israeli government is filled with extremists who do not give an F about the rule of law because they are all or nothing, river to the sea, Jewish supremacists. People like Ben Gavir, people like Smotrich, and Netanyahu now needs these extremists to maintain his power, his coalition. The second that this war ends, what will happen? Netanyahu, who's very unpopular, by the way, will most likely be held accountable for numerous criminal allegations of corruption. And also, the Israeli people will say, how did the worst terror attack in our nation's history happen under your watch? What were you doing? And also, why did you actually help fund and strengthen Hamas? The fact that you bragged about it. Oh, yes, because to do a divide and conquer with Palestinian leadership to ensure that there's no Palestinian state. So all these questions will be asked. Most likely, Netanyahu will have to step down. He'll never get in power again. And most likely, if there is justice, he'll probably end up in jail. So it is in Netanyahu's interest to keep the war going forever. Forever. He's perfectly fine, much like Donald Trump, to let everything else burn just so him and his family will survive. Sound familiar, folks? And then the extremists in the Israeli government are using Netanyahu because they realize he's compromised. They're like, all right, we get everything now, river to the sea. We get to redeem the land. That's the language of settlers. And everything belongs to us, and we don't care about the Palestinians. In fact, they don't even care about the, wait for it, Israeli hostages. Because even the family members, the Jewish Israeli family members of the hostages for over a year now have been protesting this government because they realize something that American officials didn't realize until too late, that Netanyahu does not give an F about the hostages. Someone who cares about the hostages would not behave like this Netanyahu government, freaking carpet bombing all of Gaza, going full steam ahead with military escalation, going full steam ahead with the conquest and occupation, disregarding his own senior officials, military intelligence, right? They don't care at all. And Israel, as has already been revealed, has accidentally killed Israeli hostages in their campaign of war crimes and genocide, right? So they don't care. They don't care whatsoever about the hostages. And Hamas, which is an extremist organization that did commit acts of terror, it is not suicidal, folks. It knows that if it gives up the remaining hostages, they have no leverage left. In fact, I don't even know if they have any leverage left because Netanyahu doesn't care. He wants to take the land and stay in power. So this is why you've seen the family members of the hostages now become very vocal, protest Netanyahu, protest his extremist government, and say that this is not the actions of a government that allegedly cares about bringing home the hostages. Also, this is also terrible for Jews. What I've been trying to tell people and warn people for the past year and a half is that this war, which has now become a genocide, will be exploited by the number one domestic terror threat in America. What is that number one domestic terror threat, folks? White nationalists and right-wing terror groups. Right-wing terror groups and white nationalists who now have allies in the Trump administration. I'm not making this up. These are folks who believe, first and foremost, that there's something called ZOG, Zionist Occupied Government. All of their conspiracy theories are rooted in anti-Semitism, whether it's white replacement or whether it's a white genocide, right? They believe that the Jews, and you have to say it like that, the Jews are the nerve center, the head of this nefarious cabal that is using Black people, brown people, immigrants, feminists, and Muslims to weaken and replace Western, aka white civilization. They do not like the Jews whatsoever. And so what you've seen in the past year and a half is a spike in both anti-Semitism and anti-Arab and anti-Muslim violence because they're using a divide and conquer. Nick Fuentes, who is a Hitler lover and a white nationalist, if you hear him sometimes, folks are like, wow, this is a very eloquent pro-Palestinian activist. He does not care about Palestinians. He's using it as a wedge to go against Jews, right? And we've seen even Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has gone and defended Nick Fuentes, right? She went to one of his conferences. Who dined with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West? Donald Trump. Stephen Miller, right? Some of the groups that he's associated with, white nationalist, anti-immigrant groups, right? So this is going to be terrible for Jews and Jewish security. It's going to be terrible for Palestinians. It's going to be terrible for Arabs. It's going to be terrible for that entire region. And furthermore, it is a self-destructive path for Israel. Israel, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd live to see this. More Americans in the past 2 years have been radicalized against Israel than ever before. Israel has its lowest favorability rating ever. A majority of young people around the world, and especially a majority of Democrats, are now pro-Palestinian. A report came out just a couple of days ago, this week, in the New York Times, that young Jewish Americans in New York are overwhelmingly supporting Zoran Mamdani, not in spite of his views on Gaza, because of his views on Gaza. And I also want to say this is very important. You need the nuances. A majority of American Jews are not Netanyahu's base. Let me repeat this. A majority of American Jews are not Netanyahu's base. Netanyahu's base is white evangelical Christians and the right wing. The number one Zionist group in America is CUFI, CUFI. Go check it out right now. CUFI, Christians United for Israel. That was organized by, and the founder is Pastor Hagee out of Texas. And I've done reporting out of Israel. I've gone to the West Bank 3 times. I remember I went to one of these settlements, which was like a fortified city, and I saw a state-of-the-art gym, fitness center, and it was called the Hagee Complex, named after Pastor Hagee, right? And on my flight there, it was all Christians, all these Christian groups, all these churches, right? It was overwhelmingly just Southern Baptist and evangelical Christians who went to do pilgrimage to Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu says one of the biggest allies of Israel is Christians United for Israel. A majority of American Jews, especially majority of American women, voted for Kamala Harris. And by the way, when they do this divide and conquer between Palestinians and Jews and Muslims and Jews, Arabs and Jews, they all lump us together. It's all bullshit, folks. Again, I give you the widespread Jewish American support from Dani, and I give you the fact that so many rabbis have been arrested or were arrested recently protesting Netanyahu. I also give you the fact that in college campuses, many of these multiracial, multi-religious student movements to end the occupation and call for a ceasefire and for a return of hostages were led by Jews. So don't let these people fool you into thinking that anyone who's pro-Palestinian and against the Israeli genocide and occupation is anti-Semitic. Are we saying that all these Jews who have been brave and vocal, all these guys are anti-Semitic? It just doesn't work. And that's also a problem, is that when ADL and legacy organizations like ADL use anti-Semitism as a cudgel to go against free speech, pro-Palestinian activists in universities, first and foremost, they're hurting these democratic freedoms and liberties that are a lifeline for marginalized communities, especially Jews. Number two, they're working with a fascist anti-Semitic regime. Yes, a fascist anti-Semitic regime, which is the Trump regime. I want to remind people that was just last month that Donald Trump openly used the word Shylock. He knows what it means, and then he double down on it. Donald Trump, by the way, who promotes the QAnon conspiracy theory, Donald Trump and Republicans who promote the anti-Semitic replacement theory, Donald Trump, by the way, who sat with Nick Fuentes, refuses to condemn him because he knows if he condemns Nick Fuentes, he loses part of his base. Donald Trump, who's repeatedly promoted the dual loyalty trope, right? But ADL is okay with that. ADL is also okay with Elon Musk, who has platformed Nazis on X, who has literally doubled down on the whole deep state, Jews run everything, conspiracy theory, and who did a double Sig Heil. That was okay. That was okay. But God forbid Mahmoud Khalil or Meza Oztur or some, college students advocate for Palestinians, then they deserve to be kidnapped by ICE and sent to a detention center. What ADL and some of these legacy Zionist groups are doing is a short-term win, but long-term disaster. America, for democracy, for Israel, and the security of Jews. And this is why when you have allies who are speaking out, not going to agree on everything, folks. I get it. But anyone who's willing to call out this genocide right now, you might disagree on certain things on Israel and Palestine, build a coalition, because I've never seen in my lifetime such a huge shift on an issue. I've said this before. There's only 2 issues I've seen in my lifetime. There's been such a rapid shift. Uh, Obama term 1 to Obama term 2, equality. Patty, yes. You were last month. If you recall, he's repeatedly said Chuck Schumer has become a Palestinian. He's become a Palestinian. He said that several times, using literally the ethnicity of an entire group as number one, and also referring to Jews as Palestinians simply because, according to Donald Trump, they're not pro-Israel enough, which is just, all this is bullshit, folks. Double Sig Heils, Nick Fuentes, white nationalist conspiracy theories, and they now all of a sudden make us think that they care about Jews. Just give me a break. Of course they don't. They're just using anti-Semitism to crush Columbia University, education, pro-Palestinian groups, activism, and free speech. Folks, this is it. It's about 12 o'clock where I am right now. I think it's 1 o'clock Eastern, about 10 o'clock Pacific time. But for the nearly 400 people joining me this late, I just felt compelled to say something. Watching this latest news about the Israeli Security Cabinet as of today, voting for a takeover, a military takeover of Gaza. It's occupation. It's occupation. They want it all. River to the sea. My internet quality is not good. I'm so sorry, folks. Can you all hear me and see me? To me, I'm not glitching. Let me know. Jill says missing a lot of the content due to internet quality. I only saw one or two people saying the internet is bad, but let me know, folks. So if you can, if you can, oh, choppy. All right, hold on. Let's see. That sucks. Is this better? Is that better? Better? Yes? Glitchy or less glitchy? Good? All right, thank you. Thanks all. Sorry about that. Um, so the reason why I think this is important for the people joining us late is speak out. And especially if you're not Palestinian. Look, they lump us all together. I'm a son of Pakistani Muslim immigrants. It doesn't matter, folks. I remember ever since UC Berkeley, anytime you speak out, what do? They all lump us together. We're all Hamas. We're all ISIS, Al Qaeda. Ilhan Omar is a black woman who was once a refugee. They call her head of Hamas. She's not Palestinian. It doesn't matter. Adil Manji, the judge, who, by the way, should have been in the federal appellate court, but Nevada senators, Democratic Nevada senators, Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen, along with Joe Manchin, went along with the right wing that smeared this Pakistani American, son of immigrants, who was nominated by Biden. And guess what? They were cowards and they went ahead and smeared this poor guy who's, again, a son of Pakistani immigrants, but this was happening during the war, during Biden, the last year of Biden. And they somehow equated him with Hamas and extremism, right? And now we have Emil Bouvi, thanks to Jackie Rosen, Cortez Mosto, and Joe Manchin. Not making that shit up. Just a disgrace. So when anyone who's brown skinned or Muslim or Arab or Palestinian speaks out, you know what they call us: Hamas, extremists, this and that. That's why it's so important for a whole bunch of people who are outside of these communities to speak with one voice and say, I don't care about ethnicity, religion, gender. I care about humanity and human rights. This is a genocide. And not with my money, not with my dollar, not with my support. And this is where we need to put pressure upon our elected officials. And you've seen for the first time in my lifetime, that pressure is working, folks. The fact that you got 27 Democratic senators, including Bernie Sanders, to make that vote. The fact that you have 11 elected officials in the House calling it a genocide, 10 Democrats and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I know the bar is so low, it's in hell. The bar is so low, it's in hell. It's something. And these people aren't dumb. They've looked at the polls. They have looked at the polls. Joe Biden, we tried our best to convince him, but he's ideologically committed. He's responsible for the genocide. I know people don't like hearing it. It's the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Kamala Harris, in hindsight, should have shifted away with him, but Biden said no daylight. He listened to corporate consultants, refused to even have a Palestinian American speaker on stage at the DNC. The YouGov polls show that the number one reason why so many Democratic voters, the base, stayed away was due to what they perceived to be the genocide in Gaza, right? So they have ignored their base on this issue for so long. They can't ignore it anymore. This has become a hot button issue. You have to be against genocide. I think for any Democrat moving forward, you have to literally say, nope, I'm not going to support Netanyahu. Nope, I'm not supporting occupation. Nope, I'm not going to take money from APAC. You can't just wish-wash this in both sides anymore. And this is the base now of the Democratic Party. Look at the Gallup poll, the Pew poll, the CNN polls. This is where the Democratic base is. This is where young people are. This is where the majority of the world is. Over the last weekend, 300,000 people in Sydney, Australia, marched for a pro-Palestine march for the end of the occupation and the war, right? Are all of them anti-Semites, folks, especially the Jews and the rabbis? Of course not. And if you do care about anti-Semitism, and you should, because anti-Semitism is sadly real and has caused so much insecurity and fear for Jewish Americans both here and Europe, this will only make it worse. It will make Islamophobia worse, anti-Semitism worse, anti-Arab bigotry worse. And Israel, folks, has now become a pariah state. It has become a pariah state. This is like if you're old enough, you remember the 80s with South Africa and apartheid. It shifted. It shifted overnight, and then South Africans became the bad guys in movies. Lethal Weapon 2, deep cut. Once you lose the polls, the youth, and the culture, you're in bad shape. And Israel has lost the youth, the majority, and the culture. It's done. Kneecap, they don't give a shit, man. They're an Irish band, a rap band. They say what they want to say. Kids love them. You saw what happened in Glastonbury. You saw what's happening even at the Academy Awards. No other land, the documentary about settlements in the West Bank, the occupation, could not get a distributor. Won Best Documentary. The year before, it was Jonathan Glazer's fantastic movie Zone of Interest, and you heard his speech, right, where he gave a speech, and then there was the boycott of Glazer, but thankfully twice as many people then did a counter support of Jonathan Glazer. So even in Hollywood and the media, I can tell you that the majority of people who work in Hollywood and media, they're calling it out. But we've seen power, establishment power, billionaires, donors, APACs, both the Republicans and Democrats still are hanging on to this nut of corporate donors and APAC. But it has to change, folks. It has to change. And I feel like we're witnessing it in real time. And what Israel is doing with this decision to escalate and have a military takeover of Gaza, first and foremost, will be disastrous for the Palestinian people. I think first and foremost, concentrate on the people. You have about more than 2 million people who have just endured nothing, nothing but suffering. I mean, just look at these images of Gaza. There's nothing left. What are they going to conquer? There's nothing left. And now they want to move the Palestinians to the south. That is a really nice way of saying ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is a part and parcel of genocide. And these humanitarian cities, as Netanyahu calls them, again, I want to quote the former prime minister of Israel, Yair Lapid. He said, it's a concentration camp. So this is just the top of my head. Just some thoughts. It's late at night. I thank you all for joining. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to have economist Justin Wolfers. He's fantastic. I'm also going to have Glenn Kirshner. I'm also subbing in for Mary Trump live. Mary Trump is taking the day off tomorrow, so that'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And if I have a little bit of time, I would love to. I'm going to talk to a Palestinian American or someone, hopefully from Gaza. It was late. I tried to get some of my friends who were Palestinian, but one of them was like, "Bro, I'm in bed, but I appreciate you doing this." And another person right now, they're just following the news and they're, as you can imagine, very depressed. So if you can, folks, do I ever sleep? I don't. I don't sleep. And if you hear all those kids, those are my kids in the background. I just got a note from Mossab Abu Toha, Pulitzer Prize winning commentator and poet, originally from Gaza. He was the one who got out. You should see his interview with Jon Stewart that came out just today. And he just sent me a message. And all he said is I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. I'm heartbroken. Well, what else can you say? Mossab, if you see my interview with him, he showed me a book he's been keeping, and he's just been tracking the names of people have been killed. And on 2 pages, he showed me a family tree, 3 generations of his family gone, killed by Israel in the past 2 years. 3 generations. 3 generations, folks. It's genocide, and the entire world is witnessing it. America doesn't. I do think it's shameful that it's only 27 senators who voted to stop sending aid to Israel. But again, if you've been following the story, or look at my hair, folks, it's gray. I know the bar is so low. Everyone says only 27. I get it, but if any of you are old like me, you all remember 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would you have imagined this? I mean, this is remarkable. So speak out, post about this, say what you can. And I'm telling you, folks, if Donald Trump picks up the phone tomorrow and tells Netanyahu to cut it off, it's over. It's over. That's how symbiotic and close this relationship is between America and Israel. It's a special relationship. Without American money, weapon, and support, Israel cannot do this. So maybe as Americans, maybe as Americans, inshallah, we can put pressure on our elected officials to make this more and more mainstream. And yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, Tammy, you're right, like just awful. On this issue in the past week, we live in the upside down. We live in the friggin' upside down, folks. The fact that this is happening. Zev's here. Zev, you wanna join me real quick? I've been talking about my thoughts. I don't know what Zev's thoughts are on this, but I'm talking about my thoughts about what Israel's doing, and the news that just came on right now about Israel's plan of military takeover of Gaza and why it's going to be absolutely disastrous for Israel, for the Middle East, especially for Palestinians, for Jews, for Arabs, and for Americans, folks. And the reason why I say it's going to be terrible for Americans is if you travel the world, America is seen as a complicit partner with Israel in the occupation, the expansion of settlements, and the genocide. This is a recruitment for extremist groups. This was a recruitment and a propaganda tool used by Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, right? They said, look, the imperialist forces, the Zionist forces aided by the United States of America. So it is, and people who've been working counterterrorism have been saying for the past year and a half, warning that Israel is now creating, as a result of its genocide and war crimes, a brand new recruitment pool for extremist organizations. This is where we are. I don't know if did Zev respond or no. I saw Zev jump on one of Zev's talks. Zev, let me see. Let me see if I can get Zev. If I can't, no problem. Uh, we'll talk to some other folks. Give me 1 second, peoples. Give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. All right. I added Zev. Let's see if he wants to come on or not to talk about this. Thanks to nearly the 500 people who are watching this. It's 12 o'clock where I'm in Texas right now. I'm just visiting family. It's about 1 o'clock Eastern time, and I'm assuming it's 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock in the West Coast. It's just it's heartbreaking, folks. And this is the thing is that at the very least, I hope people get more aware. They get more aware about what's happening. Even even in addition to the genocide, I should say, there's the West Bank, folks. We don't even talk about the West Bank. There's 2.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank. They live under conditions of apartheid. That's not my word. That's Jimmy Carter's word. That's the word of Desmond Tutu. Oh, who helped fight apartheid in South Africa. That's the words of Amnesty International. I've been there 3 times. If you ever have the opportunity, just go see with your own eyes. Your own eyes. Go to Hebron, Hebron. Go see that city. Go visit the Jewish side of Hebron. Then go visit the Palestinian side of Hebron. The Jewish side of Hebron, you have about 900 Israeli soldiers protecting about 800 Jewish settlers. You go to the Palestinian side of Hebron, it's like the heart of darkness. It's like there are roads only for Jews. You see security everywhere. You see turnstiles. You see checkpoints everywhere. Right. I went and visited one Palestinian family that is surrounded by 3 sides by Israeli settlers. And the Israeli settlers harass her. They throw alcohol bottles, and she refuses to leave because she goes, if I leave, they'll take over. Hebron is what I call the heart of darkness. It's so bad there that it is the most, as someone from Breaking the Silence, it's a group that was started by Israeli former members of the military. One person described it this way. He himself is a Zionist Jew, Israeli. He said, I'm a proud Zionist, but he's one of the leaders of Breaking the Silence. He said, it's a beautiful microcosm of the occupation. It's just a perfect distillation of it because it's so unmistakable. The Israeli boot on the neck of Palestinians. It is apartheid, 2 different systems for 2 people, 2 unequal systems. Israeli Jews live under Israeli law. Their Palestinian neighbors live under military law. Unequal access to land, unequal access to security, unequal access to the internet, unequal access to water. And the military boot on is perpetually on the neck of Palestinians. I'll give one quick example. Life is normal. Everything is fine. People are going to a grocery store. We're getting gas. Out of nowhere, here comes some Israeli tanks. They set up a checkpoint, start just for no reason, folks. I was there, saw with my own eyes, just hassling people, talking shit to people, yelling at people. Everything was fine until they got there, right? It's like when we talk about excessive policing in the United States of America, not every situation demands you bring a gun to it. Sometimes you just need a mental health professional. When you bring people who aren't trained and who are bellicose and are jacked up and have guns, and they put and they bring that gun and a hammer to solve every problems, what happens? You're seeing it happen in LA with masked armed agents terrorizing the city. Now imagine that times 10 in the West Bank. And now imagine these settlers who have become more violent and more extreme, given a complete carte blanche thanks to this extremist government. It's perpetual terrorism happening right now. Someone just said these settlers are with their manifest destiny types. Exactly right, Jonathan. And folks, it cannot happen. It cannot happen without our taxpayer dollars. So you go there and you see this as an American, and this is what radicalizes a lot of Jews. They're like, whoa, they didn't tell us this. They didn't. When we did Birthright, we didn't come to the West Bank. We just went to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Yeah, a lot of American tourists go, whoa, 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 whoa. We didn't see all of this. Hebron, whoa, Jenin, wait, what's that? East Jerusalem, the checkpoints, whoa. And then when you're brown skinned like me, even when you're not Palestinian, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Uh, I went to Israel. I went to Jerusalem. I was treated really well by some people, but then we got kicked out of cabs when people found out we were Muslim. We got kicked out of souks. I was crossing the road one time with two hijabi women, Americans, wearing two women wearing the headscarf. Two women just looked at us, said something unpleasant in Hebrew, spit at us. Got assaulted by the IDF simply while standing while brown. And I don't want to whine or complain about it because this is daily life times 1,000 for Palestinians, folks. It is just terrible. It is heartbreaking and it is infuriating, and you have to see it. And now we're seeing it thanks to social media with our own eyes. We're seeing it in Gaza. And it's a genocide that has been live streamed for the past year and a half. And now Israel, as of today, Security Cabinet has voted for a takeover, even against the advice of its own military and Israeli leaders, people like even like Naftali Bennett, and even like people like Ehud Olmert, who's a former prime minister, and Yair Lapid. It's going to get worse, folks. It's going to get worse. There's 500 people watching. I think that's it for me right now. This was just my thoughts about the news that I just read. And my recommendation, finally, again, is speak out on social media. Speak out if you can, whatever you use, Facebook, Twitter, social media. Promote these voices, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, B'Tselem. Promote people who are speaking out. Peter Beinart's doing a fantastic job. Rula Jibril. Tommy, even the Pod folks, Pod Save America folks, John Stewart, even, right? People are waking up. Um, and put pressure on these elected officials. Just tag them. Put pressure on them. They're responding to pressure, folks. They are waking up slowly but surely. They are waking up. Put pressure on the Schumers and Hakeem Jeffries and the Gillibrands. Um, we got 27, including Bernie Sanders, 27 senators, Democratic senators, voting for the first time a majority to stop aid to Israel. And now you got 11 elected officials in the House as of this week, 10 Democrats and Marjorie Taylor Greene calling it a genocide. We need more. We need more. So Jill says, "You're not old. My oldest daughter is older than you." I'm 44. I've aged horrifically, but thank you. You have excellent taste. For those who joined in late, I'll have this up in an hour. And I'm going to put up a conversation I had earlier today. Strongly recommend people hearing it tomorrow or Saturday. It's terrifying, but it's important. Jean Guerrero is a journalist who wrote a book called Hate Monger. It's like the definitive book on Stephen Miller. And she traces the radicalization in this conversation, which I had earlier today. I'm going to put up in about 30 minutes. She traces the radicalization of Stephen Miller, and she takes the DeLorean from high school Stephen Miller to second administration Stephen Miller, his influences, who radicalized him, his worldview, why and how he's so dangerous. I strongly recommend hearing it because he, along with, I would say, Russell Vought and maybe a few other people, is a shadow president. Donald Trump is old and broken and, spending most of his time golfing and grifting and trying to distract from Epstein. But when it comes to the cruelty, the ICE, the immigration, the alligator Alcatraz, that is all the brainchild of Stephen Miller, who is committed to this type of genocidal cruelty against immigrants, brown people, black people, and Muslims. And he also has ties with these hardcore right-wing Zionist fanatics, people like David Horowitz, who helped groom him, right? It's all a big just the circle of the worst people on earth. It'll be out in 30 minutes. Yes, and also the Curtis Yarvin acolytes. Absolutely correct. The cruelty is the point. Why aren't I a newscaster? Yolanda, I'm actually a writer. I was an English major. I went to law school. During law school, I wrote a play. I produced the play. I then graduated from law school. Was working. I graduated law school 2008 during the economic crisis. Became a solo attorney. Never did anything douchebaggy as an attorney. Always helped folks. Did most immigration law. Then produced the play in New York. Published the play. Somehow started writing articles and started getting published in Huffington Post and Guardian. Then did a report on the Islamophobia Network of America, which talked about all these freaks who promoted all these racist conspiracy theories, who were once vomited out. We talk about it with Gene Guerrero in the interview. 2014, these people were all seen as freaks in the Republican Party, but the base was with these people. And these people then in the first Trump administration got inside the Trump administration. And some of these people are the main influencers of Stephen Miller, like David Horowitz. So I wrote about that. Then I got married, moved to DC, trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was going to apply to Kinko's, true story. And then Al Jazeera America called me and said, hey, do you want to co-host a show? Had no desire to be on television, never desired to co-host a show, but they were starting the Al Jazeera America's version of The Stream. So now 2 months later, I'm on live television 5 days a week co-hosting a show. And then one thing led to another. So there you go. That's about as close as I get to newscasting. But I never wanted to be on TV. I'm actually, a writer. And what I've always wanted to do, believe it or not, I got it done. I published a play, I published a book. I always thought I'd grow up and, be a novelist or a screenwriter or just telling stories. But it's a different way of telling a story, I guess. And shamelessly promote my book, Danielle. Thank you. The book is called Go Back to Where You Came From and Other Helpful Recommendations on How to Become American. And the play is Domestic Crusaders. And it got a rave review from Toni Morrison. So if you guys have $8-9, check it out. Tell me what you think. It was my play. I wrote it when I was 23, published it when I was 30. Folks, tomorrow again, well, today, Friday, Justin Wolfers, a fantastic economist, really breaks things down in a smart way. He's agreed to join me. We're just going to figure out a time, maybe 12 p.m., 1 p.m. Eastern time. The great Glenn Kirshner is going to come on 2 p.m. Eastern time. At 6 p.m. Eastern time, I'm stepping in as co-host for Mary Trump. She's taking the day off. And if I have some time in between Glenn and Mary, I will try to bring on a Palestinian American voice to talk about what they're enduring. Sadly, we don't have to imagine. We can see it. Just believe the evidence of your eyes and believe the evidence of your ears. Just literally listen to what Israeli leaders are saying, folks. Just listen to what they're saying. They are not hiding it, much like MAGA, Stephen Miller, and Donald Trump. Folks, take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. Use whatever platform you can. Like I said before, I'll say it again. Without American money and American weapons, Israel cannot continue its genocide or occupation. All it takes is one phone call from Donald Trump, and it can end. We have to do our part. We have to do our part. Put pressure on Republicans. Put pressure on the Democrats. Never say never. Never say never. Take care of yourselves, folks. Be kind, be empathetic, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Good night.